Oprah Winfrey, media empress, philanthropist, and one of the most powerful women who has ever lived, has built an empire worth over $2.5 billion from nothing. Absolutely nothing. At 72, she stands as a symbol of what human will can accomplish when the world offers you every reason to fail. But the word icon is too clean, too easy. It erases the dirt and the blood and the silence, because before the stage, before the cameras, before the magazine covers and the Presidential Medal of Freedom and the schools built in South Africa, there was a little girl in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, sleeping on a porch in a dress made from a potato sack. Tragic doesn't begin to cover it. Heartbreaking doesn't touch it. The world has seen the triumph, but very few have truly looked at the cost. What Oprah paid to become Oprah, in pain, in loss, in silence, is a story not glamorous, but brutal. If Oprah Winfrey has ever made you feel seen, truly, deeply seen, hit like as a tribute to her relentless courage. This is the story of a girl discarded by circumstance, shattered by abuse, erased by poverty, who rebuilt herself, not once, not twice, but every single decade of her life, and changed the world in the process. Oprah Gail Winfrey was born on January 29, 1954, in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, a rural town where poverty wasn't an exception. It was the weather. Her mother, Vernita Lee, was 18 and unmarried. Her father, Vernon Winfrey, was a soldier passing through. There was no family portrait, no celebration. The beginning was not glamorous, but marked by absence, the absence of money, stability, and the most basic kind of love a child deserves. For the first 6 years of her life, Oprah was raised by her maternal grandmother, Hattie Mae Lee, on a farm with no running water and no indoor plumbing. They were desperately poor, but Hattie Mae gave her something that would outlast every hardship. She taught Oprah to read. Before the age of 3, books became her first escape, her first power. Then she was sent to live with her mother in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and the real darkness began. What few people know is that between the ages of 9 and 13, Oprah was repeatedly sexually abused by a cousin, a family friend, and an uncle. She carried this in silence. As children forced into that silence always do. At 13, she ran away. At 14, she became pregnant. The baby boy was born prematurely and died shortly after birth. Oprah was a child herself, grieving a child, alone. It is heartbreaking when a life begins with this much loss before it has barely started. She was then sent to live with her father, Vernon Winfrey, in Nashville, Tennessee. And this, finally, was the turning point that didn't break her further. Vernon was strict, demanding. He required her to read books and write reports. He set a curfew. He said no. And somehow, the structure saved her. She threw herself into school, into speech, into debate. She was elected most popular girl at East Nashville High School. She won a full scholarship to Tennessee State University. She was named Miss Black Tennessee at 17. The beginning had not been glamorous, but Oprah Winfrey was already refusing to let it be the ending. The microphone always recognized her. At 17, Oprah was offered a part-time job at WVOL, a local radio station in Nashville. She read the news. She was paid almost nothing, but her voice, warm, present, unapologetically alive, stopped people mid-sentence. By 19, she had moved to television, becoming the first black female news anchor at WLAC-TV in Nashville. The camera loved her back. Then came 1976. She moved to Baltimore to co-host a local talk show called People Are Talking. It was here that something clicked, something deeper than broadcasting. When guests spoke about pain, real pain, Oprah didn't pivot to the next question. She stayed. She felt it with them. The world saw a talk show host. But the truth was different. She was building a space where people felt less alone. By 1983, she moved to Chicago to host a struggling morning show called AM Chicago. Within 1 month, ratings doubled. Within a year, it was the highest-rated talk show in Chicago. It was renamed The Oprah Winfrey Show in 1986. Then came the moment that announced her to the world. 1985. Director Steven Spielberg cast Oprah in her very first film role as Sophia in The Color Purple. She had never acted professionally. She auditioned while fasting, convinced she would be punished for wanting something so badly. She was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. She did not win, but the world had seen something that could not be unseen. By 1986, The Oprah Winfrey Show was syndicated nationally. Within its first year of national syndication, it generated $125 million in revenue. Oprah received $30 million of that. She was 32 years old. Suddenly, everything changed. She founded Harpo Productions in 1986, one of the first production companies owned by a black woman in American history. She controlled her own content, her own narrative, her own empire. By 1994, the show was reaching 15 million viewers per episode in the United States alone, and was broadcast in 149 countries. Books she mentioned on air sold millions of copies overnight. Publishers called it the Oprah Effect, and they meant it with reverence. By 2003, Forbes named Oprah Winfrey the first black female billionaire in history. She was 49. She had come from a potato sack dress in Mississippi. The weight of that fact should never be reduced to a headline. Behind the billion-dollar smile lies a story of losses that never fully healed. The baby never spoken of. First tragedy came before the fame. At 14, Oprah gave birth to a premature baby boy in 1968 in Milwaukee. The infant, a son, lived only a few weeks for decades. This loss was something Oprah did not discuss publicly. It existed in the private architecture of her grief. Then, in 1990, a family member sold the story to a tabloid. The world learned about a pain Oprah had protected for over 20 years. She addressed it on her own terms, with characteristic honesty. She described the child as her greatest shame that became her greatest teacher. It is heartbreaking when grief is taken from you before you can offer it yourself. The weight of her own body and what it revealed for 30 years. Oprah's weight was a public spectacle in a way that was fundamentally cruel. Magazine covers tracked her fluctuations. Tabloids ran before and after photos without consent. Audiences watched her pull a wagon of fat onto her stage in 1988 as a victory and celebrated, not understanding that what they were watching was a woman in a war with herself that had nothing to do with food. What few people know is that Oprah has spoken openly about using food as emotional anesthesia, a coping mechanism rooted directly in the childhood abuse she survived. Every public diet, every public weight gain, every moment the cameras zoomed in was exploitation of a wound that had never fully closed. She said once, the behavior of overeating was just the symptom. The disease was not believing I was worthy. Devastating doesn't cover the years she spent apologizing to the world for her own body. The loss of her closest friend in September 8, 2011. Oprah lost one of the defining relationships of her life when journalist and author Bob Greene. The more documented and shocking loss that reshaped Oprah's private world was the death of her close friend, Roger Ebert, and before that, the death of the relationship she almost didn't survive. But the loss that sits heaviest is one she named publicly herself. In 2018, Oprah spoke at length about the death of her beloved dog, Solomon, and in doing so, revealed something deeper. She described his death as one of the most purely sorrowful experiences of her life, not because it equaled human loss, but because it cracked open every unprocessed grief she had carried since childhood. Grief has a way of arriving late and arriving all at once. The miscarriage of a dream. The OWN network. In January 2011, Oprah launched OWN, the Oprah Winfrey Network. She had ended the Oprah Winfrey Show, the highest-rated talk program in television history, to build something new. The first 2 years were, by any honest measure, a failure. Ratings were catastrophic. Critics declared it a disaster. Partners withdrew. By 2012, losses exceeded $330 million. The woman who had never publicly failed was failing. Publicly, completely. She later said she cried every day during that period, that she questioned everything she thought she knew about herself. The world saw a stumbling mogul, but the truth was different. It was a woman discovering that even her greatest gift, connection, couldn't be forced, couldn't be manufactured. It had to be earned again, from scratch. She earned it. By 2013, OWN had turned profitable. By 2014, it was the fastest-growing cable network for African American women in the country. Suddenly, she had done it again. At 72, Oprah Winfrey lives with the kind of hard-won peace that cannot be purchased, only survived into. She splits her time between her 42-acre estate in Montecito, California, called the Promised Land, and her properties in Maui, Hawaii. She tends her garden. She walks her dogs. She reads, still, always, voraciously. Her relationship with Stedman Graham has lasted over 40 years, a partnership she has described as foundational. They never married, by mutual choice. She has explained that marriage would have changed the dynamic in ways that would have cost her something essential. It is a decision she has never second-guessed. Her net worth stands at approximately $2.5 billion as of 2024. She has donated more than $400 million to educational causes. Her Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls in Henley-on-Klip, South Africa, founded in 2007, has educated hundreds of young women who had no other path forward. She shows up in person. She knows their names. In 2023, Oprah made global headlines when she openly discussed her use of weight management medication, not defensively, but with characteristic directness. She reframed the conversation away from shame. She humanized it. She turned her own vulnerability, once again, into a bridge. Recently, she has become one of the most prominent voices in conversations about mental health, aging, purpose, and what it means to live without apology. She is also still laughing loudly. That has never changed. At 72, Oprah Winfrey stands as proof that your origin is not your destination, and that surviving is only the beginning of the story. From Kosciuszko, Mississippi to the highest levels of global influence, from a potato sack dress to the Promised Land, from a child who was silenced to a woman whose voice has reached every corner of the earth. She is not perfect. She has stumbled in public and grieved in private, and fought battles the cameras never fully captured. But she has never stopped showing up, never stopped feeling, never stopped choosing, deliberately, to use her platform to remind people of their own worth. If this story touched your heart, leave a tribute in the comments below. Share a moment when Oprah's honesty, her warmth, her refusal to be diminished, reminded you that resilience, true resilience, is not the absence of pain, but the decision to carry it with grace and keep walking anyway. Oprah Winfrey kept walking, and the world is undeniably better for every single step.